After twin earthquakes devastated parts of Turkey and Syria, we were all glued to clips of heroic rescues. We saw teams from around the world, places like Spain, China, and even Ukraine pouring into Turkey to help survivors. But across the border in Syria, while there were some bright moments, victims were left to rely on local rescue workers with little equipment. And they said far more lives could have been saved if there had only been more help. Syrian victims also went days without foreign aid. So how did politics get in the way of helping thousands of Syrian victims? What do Russia, China, and the West have to do with the holdup? And how could the earthquake reshape power dynamics in the region? Let's take a look. First, check out this map. This is where the earthquake hit, and these colors represent the different factions that control northern Syria after more than a decade of civil war. As you can see, the areas affected by the earthquake aren't all controlled by the Syrian government, which is shown here in green. This area, which was hit hard, is the last major region held by rebels who oppose the government and President Bashar al-Assad. Assad, seen here on the front lines, calls them terrorists. He's tried to crush them and choke them off from aid for years, and he's had a lot of help from Russia. In 2014, the UN designated these 4 border crossings to deliver aid to the Syrian people without Assad's approval. But over the years, these 3 have been closed. That's because Moscow used its veto power on the UN Security Council to block them, sometimes with the backing of China. Russia has said that the crossings undermine Assad's authority and that aid should be distributed through his government in Damascus instead. And that brings us to the earthquake. When it struck, the UN's one authorized crossing, Bab al-Hawa, was damaged just like everything else around it. Roads leading to it looked like this. It took 4 days for UN trucks carrying aid to cross into northwestern Syria, which prompted fierce criticism.
إذا بدنا نتحدث عن دور الأمم المتحدة بشكل خاص، حقيقة دور الأمم المتحدة هو دور كارثي.
Many people started demanding that the UN rush aid in using any and every available route, essentially asking it to ignore authorization from the Syrian government and years of Security Council precedent. But that posed a huge dilemma for the UN, which was founded on the principle of equal sovereignty for all of its members. In other words, borders are taken very seriously. So while frantic rescue operations were playing out in Syria, the UN sought a private deal with Assad's government to get access. That private deal avoided the need to ask for Russia's support to open more borders in the Security Council. Ultimately, Assad agreed to open 2 more border crossings for 3 months. But that didn't happen until more than a week after the earthquake. So what does this mean for the people in northwestern Syria? Some say that the additional crossings came too late for search and rescue efforts. Very few people were being pulled out alive by the time they were approved. But they could make a huge difference when it comes to helping Syrian victims who are now displaced in the middle of winter. That's because the UN can provide aid at scale, both directly and through other NGOs on the ground in Syria, like the International Rescue Committee.
Things like vaccines, pharmaceuticals that would be really difficult for the NGOs to procure ourselves, and also food, which is another really big one.
Are these 3 authorized crossings for the UN enough?
It's welcome that they've got 2 additional crossings, and those 2 we know are feasible. One thing to note is the announcement says they're open for 3 months, and I think we know 3 months is not going to be sufficient.
Now, there are concerns that Assad could use those crossings as leverage when they expire, like by seeking relief from sanctions, which he criticized after the earthquake. Analysts also say the Syrian regime, which has been isolated for years, may use the earthquake to try to improve relations with Arab neighbors. Since the earthquake, those Arab neighbors have sent planes full of food and aid to government-controlled regions. And some have come to meet Assad in person, something the US has been watching closely.
We don't support normalization of relations with the Assad regime.
Reestablishing those ties could help Assad attract more investment in Syria, which was badly needed even before the earthquake. But experts don't expect the front lines of the Syrian civil war to change. And for the millions of people living in the rebel-held territory, their future could become even more dependent on foreign aid.